the stain of original sin. It's interesting, this beautiful privilege of Mary. One of the great English poets was actually not a Catholic. His name was Wordsworth. Says that Mary is our tainted nature's solitary boast. I like that.
Beautiful.
Mary is our tainted nature's solitary boast. What the poet Wordsworth is saying is, in humanity, there's a stream in humanity that's polluted, but there's one stream that was never polluted, and that's the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Immaculate Conception. So that's kind of like a brief intro to our topic today. And Father Craig is going to be talking about a couple of beautiful experiences that these two individuals had. One was a nun who had an encounter with the Blessed Mother in 1830 in the convent in Paris. I think it's called Rue de Bac, is the name of the street where she lived. And I was thinking in preparation for this conversation we're going to have, that Father Craig would be able to talk to us a little bit about what happened, because it was about a week ago in our Oblate Holy Hour, you went through the three different apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary to St. Catherine Laboure in the convent of Rue de Bac, and how that was related to the Immaculate Conception. So that was actually 1830, which was kind of like an anticipation of preparation from the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. So I personally find, after Our Lady of Guadalupe, Lourdes, and Fatima, I find this is probably my favorite. After, because it's so tender, and the encounter between Mary and this nun, they're so, I think, not that I'm an expert in this, I think it's but the only time I've ever heard where in a private apparition the person actually places her hands on Mary's lap and talks in such an intimate, personal way. So would you like to maybe talk about what happened between Our Lady and St. Catherine Laboure, and maybe even connect this to the reality of the Immaculate Conception?
Well, I'd like to try.
Okay.
Yes, that's a beautiful story. Thanks for reminding me of that. And it happened to a novice, a 25-year-old novice. She just entered the sisters' convent, and you might think, well, the Lord, took someone that's rather inexperienced, or Our Lady chose to appear to someone who's rather inexperienced. What a great grace, but other people may have been living in religious life many years and they never saw Our Lady. So we might think that. But actually, apparently she was already very holy by the time she entered the convent at age 24. And that she had wanted to enter much earlier, when her older sister had gone to, I think, the same community where the Daughters of Charity, of St. Vincent de Paul. And she wanted to go, but it was a numerous family. Her older sister had already gone, and she was the second or third in the family. And so she was not allowed to go by her father. Her mother died when she was 9 years old, so that she became very important in the family to keep things going for all the 10 or so younger siblings that she had. And so even though she was, as a young teenager, she had that aspiration, it wasn't until she was 24 that she finally was able to enter the convent. Her father finally allowed her to. Even when she was 22, she asked and he said no. But I guess something happened where he relented, and then she was able to go when she was 24. But so already she had a great, lot of virtues and a lot of holiness. So even though she's a novice, she wasn't exactly a novice in holiness, let's say. And so one night she's in the dormitory, and I'm not sure if all the beds are kind of one next to another, with a little space in between for a little nightstand or something. But at any rate, she wakes up at night and she sees a little boy who is very luminous. This little boy, she understands to be her guardian angel. And the boy bids her to come and to follow him, and she does. She follows him and goes through the dormitory, goes through the house all the way to the chapel. And then goes into the chapel, and in a certain chair in the chapel, Our Lady appears, I guess standing up, and then she sits down in that chair. And then she invites Catherine, the novice, to come close to her. And so Catherine kneels at her, as she's sitting down. She's, like you said, place her hand in the lap of Our Lady. Indeed, a very intimate closeness to Mary. And that's very beautiful, because you're right, I haven't heard about that in other apparitions. But apparently this soul was so good and so pure and so holy already that this was something she could do, that Our Lady allowed her to do, let's say. I'm not sure what the first conversation was about. That was sometime in June. And then later was another conversation in November. It was actually November 27th. So once again, but this time it wasn't at nighttime. It was during the afternoon. And so she got summoned somehow to the chapel by an interior source, a prompting or something. And then she sees Our Lady there in the chapel. But this time she sees her with the design of the miraculous medal. She sees her holding a globe in her hand, which is the world, represents the world, like a transparent globe. And then, but then the scene changes, and I think she's on top of the globe, like standing on top of the globe, and that represents the world. I think the globe had a cross on it when she was holding it in her hands. And then I think, I'm not sure if there were stars.
There are 12 stars surrounding it.
Oh, okay, 12 stars.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, 12 stars surrounding. So kind of the whole scene that we have in the miraculous medal appeared to the novice, Catherine, and she was able to, obviously it was imprinted on her mind, so she would remember all the details. And then the scene kind of turned around where she saw the back of the medal. And, that had the two hearts, the hearts of Jesus and Mary. And the heart of Mary, I think, has a sword in it.
Right.
And the heart of Jesus has, a little cross on top of it and flames and maybe have thorns.
Thorns, too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, the Sacred Heart, Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. And then also a big M with a cross on top of it, yes. Representing Mary. At the foot of the cross, Mary's involvement in the Passion of Jesus. There have been many theologians have talked about a possible future dogma of Mary the co-redemptrix. But this would be kind of a symbol of that, that doctrine of Mary's so close association with Jesus at the foot of the cross. And I'm not sure if there's anything else on the back of the medal.
Why don't we just go through the symbolism of it just in great detail, and then we can maybe pursue the conversation. So on the front, you have, and you can maybe explain this because you explained this in your talk. You have the Blessed Mother, and she's standing on the globe.
I see. There's 12 stars on the back.
There's 12 stars on the back. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. On the front,
and
there's
a
globe.
On the front, you have, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us every course to me." You have that prayer. Then you have Mary standing on the globe, and she has her hands open, and you have to have a big medal to see it, but you see rays that are coming out. Do you want to maybe explain those rays? You explained that in your talk. You see the rays that are coming out. So would you like to explain that?
Yes. So her hands are down like this, and there's rays coming out of each of her fingers and going down towards the earth. And some of them reach the earth, or some reached all the way to the bottom, and others did not. And they were coming like from gems on her fingers, maybe like different colored gems. So it really was a magnificent display of these rays coming from her hands of different colors, I think. But she noticed that some rays didn't reach the earth and others did. And she asked what the difference was, Catherine asked. And Our Lady said somewhat sadly that there were people who would be able to receive, or that God would want to give them graces through Mary, but they were not disposed to receive them. That is, I guess they didn't love Mary enough, perhaps, to be able to receive them, to merit to receive them, something like that. So it's kind of sad, that there's these treasures that are wanting to be given, that our Blessed Mother wants to give, but the people aren't ready to receive them. So,
what do you think some of the most precious graces that we should maybe beg from the Blessed Virgin Mary, even right now? What do you think?
Well, I'd say growth in holiness, faith, hope, and charity. If there's any particular area that we need to work on where the virtue is lacking because we have a sin in that area, we could ask that too, to to be healed of a sin that maybe we have struggled with for a long time, or maybe we haven't struggled enough with, because we kind of went along with it. But that we could struggle more against it and win the victory over it. So maybe that would be a great grace to ask for.
The conversion of sinners, maybe?
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah. Of this sinner and of other sinners.
Other sinners.
Yeah, that's true. That's very important. I think it's very much in harmony with the heart of Mary and Jesus that we would ask for, with great confidence, for the conversion of sinners.
So turning the medal around in the back side, you've got those 12 stars you mentioned, and then you can see there's a cross, a big cross.
Yes.
Then you also said that there's an M, a big M beneath the cross.
Yes. You
said also there's a heart. There's a heart that's pierced with a sword, and then there's another heart that seems to be surrounded by thorns. Why don't you take that? Maybe we can explain it piece by piece. I'll ask you. Okay, what is the cross? What does the big cross symbolize?
Well, I think it symbolizes the passion of Jesus. Jesus died on the cross, and then Mary's closely associated with it.
Do we have to carry a cross at times?
Well, yes, we do. we pretty much all the time. There's going to be some cross. Sometimes it's a lighter cross, sometimes it's heavier. It could change from day to day and hour to hour.
We carry the cross with the help of Mary. She's our life, our sweetness, and our hope. She makes it easier, right?
Oh, that's right. That title is very beautiful. Life, sweetness, and hope.
How about the M beneath the cross? You mentioned the possibility of Mary as co-redemptrix. Could that M beneath the cross also be related to what Jesus said from the cross in John chapter 19 when he spoke to both John and Mary? Is there some other symbolism there that might be worth commenting upon?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's really the scene that we have from the evangelist that shows that Mary was at the foot of the cross, at least the principal one. And she's not called Mary there, she's called woman, or she's called the mother of Jesus, and then Jesus addressed her as woman. But it's a very formal address. It's a polite address, too. Even, it could connect to the woman of Genesis 3:15.
The Apocalypse, yeah.
Yes, that's right. The woman who is going to step on the head of the serpent.
The proto-evangelium realized, right?
That's right, yes.
What about the hearts? Okay, there's a heart. You mentioned there's a heart that's pierced with a sword. Then there's the heart that's surrounded by thorns. Could that relate also to the 7 sorrows of Mary? Could it be?
Well, yes, it could.
Do you know the 7 sorrows of Mary?
I think I do, yes.
What are they?
Well, they are the flight to Egypt.
Prophecy of Semen is the first.
Oh, the first one. Okay, I start with the second.
Oh.
So go backwards to the first. Yeah, that's right. The Prophecy of Semen is the first one.
What happened there anyway? Why was that? Why was that related to Mary's heart being pierced?
Well, he announced that her heart would be pierced, that her soul would be pierced with a sword.
What were the words?
He said, "Behold, this child is for the rising and the fall of many in Israel, and a sign that will be contradicted." And then he, especially a message to her was, "And a sword will pierce your soul."
So that's probably the first sorrow of Mary, right?
Yes, you're right. And so that's where the sword comes from.
You mentioned the one, the flight into Egypt, that was another one?
That's right. To know that her son is being sought out by the local king to be killed.
Wow. And
that would put fear in the heart of any mother, and a great anguish.
Yes.
So, they left that very night with Joseph being very obedient to the dream, but I think Mary wanted to leave that very night too.
Yes.
They both were in agreement on that one, to keep the child safe at any cost.
Right. And the third is actually, I think it's the 5th joyful mystery, which is the 3rd sorrow of Mary.
That's right. You think that the joyful mystery should be all totally joyful, but there's a great sorrow in the 5th one, that is, and that is that both in the 4th and the 5th, that Jesus Jesus disappeared from sight for 3 days. They lost track of him, and they were on the way home from the Passover feast, and they realized he must have stayed behind in Jerusalem. So they went running back to Jerusalem, and then they tried to find him there.
In the resurrection, right?
Exactly, yes, that's right.
Then the other 4 sorrows or swords are related to the Passion directly, aren't they?
You're right. So you have to jump ahead, 18 years after that last sorrow to, or no, even more, 21 years after the last sorrow to when Jesus was 33 years old, when he became the paschal sacrifice.
So the fourth we find that also on the way to the cross, don't we? The fourth sorrow?
That's right. So it's the fourth sorrow is the fourth station.
Hey, how about that?
4 and 4, there you got it.
What happened there?
Well, there, John and Mary were along the route that Jesus was coming through Jerusalem, or we don't know if it was in Jerusalem or outside of Jerusalem, but they were strategically posted on the path that Jesus was going to pass by on, and they were able to see Jesus pass by. And so Mary, for the first time in the Passion, was able to see her son and look into his eyes and he into hers. And they saw each other's tremendous sorrow.
Yes.
But Mary was really the only one that truly understood what Jesus was doing.
Yes.
He was redeeming the world, and the other apostles just didn't understand it.
Yeah. So then the fifth would be, they've already arrived at the top of Calvary, right?
That's right.
And what happens there?
So Jesus nailed to the cross and raised up on the cross.
And Mary was present there.
She is present for that one completely, yes. She witnesses the whole thing and all the cruel torments in his hands and feet with those nails being driven through, very long nails.
And the sixth would be what?
So that would be after the death of Jesus, when he's taken down from the cross, and the typical, I would say typical, but it's a popular pose of Mary holding the dead body of her son in her lap.
It's like the Pietà of Michelangelo. Right?
That's right. He made it very popular, the Pietà of Michelangelo. So we think of Mary holding Jesus. Although Jesus is tall, but in Michelangelo's sculpture, it's interesting. Jesus is like a boy, so he fits very nicely in Mary's lap, like a 12-year-old boy.
I thought the film of Mel Gibson did a pretty good job of that, don't you think?
Yes. So Mary wasn't sitting up on that one. She was sitting down on the ground, and Jesus was also laying on the ground, but just against her. So that was a very beautiful way of portraying it, a very realistic way of portraying it, I think, yes.
Then you arrive at the seventh sorrow of Mary, or sword of Mary, which would be what?
Well, that's when she had to lose sight of her son for 3 days. In other words, he's being buried and being closed in the tomb with a big stone. And she felt that big stone probably like something that was separating her from her son. It felt like forever. She knew that it wasn't forever, but she felt like it was forever.
Yes.
She felt like it was going to be forever. She felt that finality of death that we feel even though we believe in the resurrection.
Okay, now going back to St. Catherine Laboure in the apparition in 1830, so you said the first one appeared when she was basically in a room there, and the little boy, who was probably a guardian angel, woke her up and beckoned her to go into the chapel.
Yes.
She arrives there and she sees the Blessed Mother present there. The Blessed Mother beckons her to come, and she places her hands in the lap of the Blessed Mother. They have a wonderful, intimate conversation. And the second one you mentioned, what happened during the course of the day, but you didn't mention the third one yet, nor what was the upshot of these three different apparitions. Eventually, what happened as a result of these three apparitions?
Well, I think to tell about the third apparition is important to say what happened with her confessor.
Okay.
So she has a confessor, a priest that comes to the convent, hears the sister's confessions or the novice's confessions. And so she tells, after that first apparition in June, she told the confessor about it, and he thought that it was probably a dream. Because in fact, it happened while she was sleeping, and she woke up and it was kind of a mysterious, this child leading her into the chapel. It could have all been a dream, according to the confessor. She didn't think it was.
Just an imagination, almost a hallucination, right?
Yeah. Sometimes we can dream things that are very realistic. But the second one, it wasn't a dream, it was in the afternoon. So he said, after the second one, he told her her imagination was too active. In other words, he didn't want to believe. And then I think it was about a month later in December when Our Lady appeared to her once again, and she was angry at the priest for not believing, not helping her with this project, because Mary had said in the second apparition that a medal should be made with this design. And so Catherine told the priest about it. He said, your imagination is too active. And then I think Our Lady expressed that she was angry at the priest, or at least that's how Catherine, I think, put it, or she told the priest about it. I think she was able to tell him in January. And then that kind of got him going, and he said, so he decided he would go to the bishop and talk about it. So the priest then went off to the bishop and said, okay, I have a novice who's telling me these things. It showed a very detailed design that we should make a medal out of. What do you think about this? And the bishop apparently was very open to it. Surprised. The bishop of Paris. They were there in Paris. You said Rue du Bac in Paris. Yes. And so with the bishop wanting to make it into a medal without any further delay, well, what could the priest say? So I guess he became a believer with the help of the bishop. And so I think immediately they made a bunch of medals. Well, not that many, only 20,000. That was the first, edition or whatever. The first minting of the medals was 20,000, and they went very quickly. People were very interested. They heard the story. They were fascinated by it. And so the story was told, but it was told in such a way that maybe the convent was identified, but not the sister.
Yes. So
nobody knew who the sister was, not even the sisters in the convent. Her own fellow novices didn't know, And she's a very humble sister, too, and so no one would have suspected it. No one would have suspected it was a novice, first of all, probably,
I'd like to tell one of the... So the medal is called the Immaculate Conception medal, but eventually it's called the Miraculous medal because of many miracles. I'd like to tell one of the miracles that you mentioned and expound upon a little bit. Then I think you'll be able to tell a couple other ones that you actually mentioned in your talk about 10 days ago. The last one that you mentioned, and if I get a couple of details wrong, you might be able to fill it in, is the story of Alphonse Rodis bone, which is a fascinating story. Here there was this Jewish man, pretty prominent in France, but he was basically against the Catholic Church, just had a real hatred for the Catholic Church. But apparently he had a Catholic friend that had great love for Mary and a great devotion to Mary, and he asked his friend to just wear the Miraculous medal and say a short prayer every day. So his friend, just to kind of placate his friend, decided to do it. So they entered into this church, and actually you were probably there. Remember, I think it was a novice, or Father Benini, San Andrea del Frate.
Oh, yeah.
The name of the church.
That's a nice church in Rome, yes.
Yes, I remember, I think it was as a novice who went to visit there.
Yes.
And it's actually where St. Maxime and Colby celebrated his first Mass.
Oh, that's interesting.
San Andrea del Frate.
Yeah.
But he was there. Alfonso Rodis was there waiting for his friend. And when he was waiting for his friend, apparently he had the apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which just radically transformed him. Instead of being an anti-Catholic and hating everything that referred to the Catholic Church, he was radically transformed. And then this guy that was born a Jew, never really seemed to practice his religion, he asked to become a Catholic. So we went through a very, I think, a pretty quick RCA program.
I believe so.
It was pretty quick, and so he was baptized. He made his first communion. He received his confirmation. Then, in your talk, you didn't mention this, but eventually, what's going to happen? He had a girlfriend, but he gave her up, and he actually became a priest. By becoming a priest, I'm pretty sure that his brother was converted because he had a really strong connection with his brother. Then he went on to found, guess what? Our Lady, Daughter of Zion, which is a religious congregation that's designed to help Jewish converts to enter into Catholicism.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I think that was a story that you told about 10 days ago. And there's a few other details. You might even have a more extensive understanding of that. But the whole idea is this. I was listening to Father Simon on Relevant Radio a little bit today, and he was talking about the scapular, and he's saying that a lady asked him to bless the scapular the other day. We have to be keenly aware that the miraculous medal, the scapular, and these sacramentals, they're not talismans or good luck charms, you know. If I can wear this, that means that's just going to be my passport to heaven. That's not the way it is. We have to try to live according to what we're wearing. What we're wearing is a symbol of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and therefore we have to try to practice the virtues of Mary, right? And that's, we had Father Quam Tron come in the other day to visit us, and in our forum, if you remember, he presented his book, which is The Imitation of Mary. He actually pulled out 12 of the virtues of Mary. So if we really love Mary, we should also want to try to imitate her virtues. So I remember you telling those stories, then you might want to add to that. Then the other one you mentioned was the story after these 20,000 medals were coined, there was a classroom of kids, and all received the medal except one little girl. She didn't receive it. She got pretty sick, and after she got sick, eventually she got the medal, and I think that she was healed almost immediately as a result. It is not so much that we're placing our hope and trust in the medal, but we're placing our hope and trust and love in what the medal represents, which is love for Mary. Isn't that true?
It's quite true.
Did you want to? Then there was another miracle too, but those were two of those three miracles that you mentioned, and I never heard the story of that little girl, but I love it.
No, it's a great one, isn't it?
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Rodis found even more so.
I think the little girl might have been shortly after the medal was minted.
There were 20,000 that were actually minted, and then the poor little girl didn't get one, did she? No?
Well, yeah, maybe she was gone that day or something. I don't know what
But that was providential, because as a result of her not getting it right away, then the miracle would come when she has that contact with the medal. So nothing happens by chance, does it?
Well, that's right. It was actually, to link it more to our day, I think it was back in 1832, there was an epidemic. Okay, we know about epidemics, don't we? Pandemics. But
where was this?
This in Paris.
Okay.
I don't know if it was beyond Paris, but at least in and around Paris, I think it was. And it was cholera. And and so everybody was getting sick with that. And in fact, that delayed the minting of the medal. That's why the apparition took place in 1830. It wasn't minted until 1832. And that's when the cholera, because the cholera epidemic had kind of postponed a little bit. But it was meant, but people were still getting cholera, and so the whole class received a medal, and the only one that wasn't there was the one that got cholera. You know, the one that didn't get the medal. And then, but then when it was given to her, she did get well immediately. She came to school the next day. That's pretty amazing, right?
I'd like to tell one or two more miracles that have come about through the Miraculous medal. And maybe, we still have a lot of time, you could maybe tell the story of Claude Newman, but I'll tell you one that I think you're going to like, and it's related to the oblates.
Okay.
When I was, I think, first year in Santa Elena, and you were probably a postulant then, there was a seminarian, cleric who was a year beyond me, Francesco Poli. Okay.
Sure, remember.
And he was ordained at probably, I think, 1985. And I really liked the guy. He wrote a book on the Blessed Virgin Mary, and he was promoting it far and wide. He loved Mary so much. But there in the Pineto, which was close to our seminary, St. Helena's, there was a, this was back in the mid-'80s, early 80s. There was a movie theater that was already presenting bad movies. You know? So I just love the childlike innocence of Paul. He said, you know, the Blessed Mother does not like this at all. We have our catechism children walking in front of it. The teens are probably going to be tempted to go in and watch that trash. So he went there on the sly, and he planted a miraculous medal, and he prayed, I think he maybe prayed 9 days, and then the theater closes down. Seriously?
Wow. That's amazing.
Beautiful story. The childlike trust that this seminary, he had really
Francesco
strong
Poli.
devotion to Mary, yes.
Wow.
When I remember as a first year postulant here, in Mario Di Agostini started the Marian group, and we studied Miraculous cultus together my first year. Just had a lot of devotion to the Blessed Mother. Another one I'd like to tell, and then we'll talk about Claude Newman. This was shortly after Roe vs. Wade, which legalized abortion in our country, one of the saddest days in the history of our country, January 22nd,
it is.
73, wasn't it?
That's it.
My parents had moved from New Jersey to Massachusetts. And within a relatively short time, there was already an abortion clinic not too far away from our house.
Wow.
So my mom and one of her good friends, kind of like your mom and your grandmother was kind of one of those prayer warriors, no?
Yes, indeed.
They were aware of this abortion clinic. So what they did was, on the sly, they planted a miraculous medal in the bricks in the clinic. In such a way that I think they did it at night or something so no one would be able to see them, no?
Oh, yeah.
They planted it there, and then they went in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and they prayed the rosary and made a holy hour. Within a relatively short time, that abortion clinic closed.
Really? Wow.
So you might say, oh, that's coincidence. No, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that someone like Francesca Poli and my mom and her friend Rita Finnemore was her good friend. If you pray with faith. Sometimes I think we believe that these words are just a cliche. Ask and you receive, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will be open. Whoever asks receives, whoever seeks finds, whoever knocks the doors be open. Sometimes I think we can kind of reduce that to a pious platitude or a cliche. But if we believe, remember that movie Little Boy?
Yes.
The mountains can be moved, right?
Yeah, that's right.
These mountains can be moved. If we have faith the size of a mustard seed. So the other day, I wasn't there, but I think Eric and Mary in the forum they were at one of your masses, and I made the reference to this to you about the same day. They said that you actually preached a homily on Claude Newman. On Claude Newman. So, how is this Claude Newman guy? Who is this Claude Newman guy? How can this Claude Newman guy be related to, say, the Miraculous Medal and the topic that we're addressing today, the Immaculate Conception? It's a beautiful story, isn't it? Would
fantastic.
You like to tell us about that story?
Well, yes, I'd like to say that it comes from the devotion of Father Greg Staub, may his soul rest in peace. He loved that story, and he made sure they got into our catechism book, so it's been very popular at St. Peter Chanel for those who would read that book. Yes, apparently he was an African-American poor man in Louisiana, if I got it right. And there was some situation that was driving him crazy, someone who was really being abusive, maybe to someone in his family. I can't remember exactly what it is, or what. I don't know if he was married or someone that mistreated his mother.
By killing someone?
But he ended up killing the man, just because it was so oppressive, the situation.
He was convicted, right?
And he was convicted of murder, and then he was put on death row there in Louisiana in the 1940s. So he was on death row. I think death row back then was a lot shorter than death row is today. They say it lasts, years and years now today, decades, whereas back then I think it was probably a relatively short process. So he's on death row and there's other prisoners there, and they're sitting around talking at a certain time, and one of them, Claude, was very interested in something one of the prisoners was wearing around his neck. It was a medal, and he asked him, "What is that?" And Claude had never had any religious formation, Catholic or Protestant, And the man said, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just a medal of Mary," or whatever he said. And to show that it didn't really mean much to him, he just took it off and threw it down on the ground. This other prisoner, who probably was a Catholic, I'm guessing. At any rate, Claude went over and picked it up, and he was really looking at it, and He put it on himself. And that was a very significant action. He did that, because that very night he had a dream. And in the dream, Our Lady appeared to him, and she was so beautiful that he'd never seen a woman so beautiful as that, as she was. And the woman told him that she wanted him to ask for a priest and start to study to become a Catholic. Wow. I think that was what she requested of him. He didn't know anything, so he asked, the guards or the warden or whoever it is if they could get a priest in there, and they were able to eventually get one in there. And he talked to Claude, and between the priest and maybe some sisters, they were giving him classes, and then others were interested in being part of that class too. And so I think there's a little group, because one, this is a man whose enthusiasm brought others into it, because he was telling them about his dream, I think, and they were very amazed by it. Not everyone, though. There was another prisoner, I don't think it was the same one that had the miraculous medal, but another one who was a Catholic, but he had also committed murder, and he was on death row. But he was not at all repentant for his murders. Whereas, Claude, it was more a murder of passion, that he just was overwhelmed by his feelings when he did it. And I think with this whole, journey of faith he was making, he was very repentant for what he'd done. But this other prisoner was not at all repentant for his murders. And he would take it upon himself to deride Claude for being so credulous and believing that all this stuff about Mary appearing to him, and he would just make fun of him for trying to live a good life there. Well, the day was coming when Claude was to be executed. I'm not sure it was electrocution they used back then. Probably it was electrocution. It was in the 1940s. At any rate, Claude was really looking forward to that day. And that was kind of interesting, because most people wouldn't look forward to the day of their death.
Having to be with that beautiful lady, right?
That's it. He wanted to be with that beautiful lady and wanted to see her son as well, and be with all the angels and saints. But yeah, that was his main thing. He'd seen how beautiful Mary was, and he couldn't wait to see her again. So for him, he was looking forward to, that's the day I'm going to see her again. Well, I guess some people got interested in his case, and maybe that fact that he was repentant, maybe the fact that he was studying to be a Catholic. I don't know what caused it, but suddenly, at the last minute, a stay of execution arrives from the governor, maybe, from some authority, and that means that it's going to be given more time for a possible other appeal or something like that, which was like a stay of about 2 weeks, I think it was. And when Claude heard that, he burst into tears, and he was heartbroken. Now, he was denied going to the electric chair, and he was heartbroken. That's not like most of us, right? But he was looking forward to going and seeing Our Lady. So, the priest came and talked to him and said, well, look at it this way. Maybe the Lord has allowed this so that, you're having certain sufferings here in the prison, and there's that, that other prisoner is giving you a hard time. Why don't you do this? Why don't you offer up this time, where your execution is stayed, for that one who's tormenting you psychologically, and maybe it'll help him. So he agrees to do that. The other prisoner's name was James Hughes. Presumably he was a white prisoner. Mm-hmm. So he offered everything up for James. Claude was offering everything up for James. And then the day of Claude's execution did arrive, and that there was no more stay of execution, and he died. He died happy, okay, because he wanted to go see Our Lady and wanted to go to heaven. Well, after about 3 months, it was the turn of James to be executed, still unrepentant. They were strapping him into the chair, and they asked him if he wanted to see a priest, because he was a Catholic. No. He wasn't at all repentant. He didn't want to see the priest. All the witnesses are there to watch the execution. I don't know if that would include some of the family members of the victims. But anyways, he's there. And all of a sudden, he's looking over into the corner, and is growing pale, and then he lets out a scream, a terrified scream. And then after that, he asks for a priest. And the priest comes to hear his confession. And the executioner or warden steps in and says, what happened? Before you didn't want the priest, and now you do. What happened to you? And so he said, well, over in the corner, I suddenly saw a vision of Claude, who had died 3 months earlier, with Our Lady, with Mother Mary, and they were together there. But that wasn't what made me scream. She showed me the place that was reserved for me in hell. Wow. And when I saw it, I screamed. And that's when I wanted to go to confession. Wow. So what an incredible grace he received, because most people don't receive that grace. If they're on the way to eternal damnation, usually they don't get any powerful last warnings like that, that would actually help them to visualize what they're going towards. But that was effective for him, and he died reconciled to God. And so we can safely say that Claude and James are together in heaven today. I mean, presumably delivered from purgatory and all that. Probably he didn't have much religious education either. So Jesus said, those to whom little is given, little is, the chastisement is lighter. So we can imagine that he's also in heaven too. So Claude and James, Claude Newman, James Hughes, praising God together, thanks to the miraculous medal. Isn't that a great story?
Beautiful story, beautiful.
Yeah.
Another one of the stories that Father Greb Staub put in that catechism book that he wrote, which is just a masterpiece, is I was leafing through it the other day, and it's related to the Blessed Mother and her power to help protect us against so much evil. And he's got the story of these two university students that were studying in Europe, and they went out at night to basically commit sin. Mm-hmm. That very night, one of them was actually stabbed to death. And the other one returned home, and they were planning also to nab him too, but it didn't happen.
Did he leave earlier from the place?
Yeah, he left a little bit earlier from the place. When he arrives at his house, what's interesting, at night he hears someone knocking on the door. And he opens up the door and he's able to see his friend. And his friend opens up his shirt and he can see fire and these serpents that are coming out of his shirt. Oh. And what had happened was that this guy, he was murdered without being repentant, and he was condemned. He was condemned forever to the eternal fires of hell. Now, why was it the other one was saved? It turned out that he prayed to the Blessed Virgin Mary, short prayer every night, and the Blessed Mother intervened to save him, and he went on to become a priest and a great missionary.
Wow!
So we just see the incredible power that the Blessed Virgin Mary has over those who are devoted to him. Let me ask you this: we've got about a couple minutes before we'll conclude our talk, and we'll give our priestly blessing. So starting tonight, we're going to be celebrating the Vigil Mass in honor of the Immaculate Conception. The Immaculate Conception, as we said earlier, is Mary was given this incredible privilege that in the very moment of her conception, she was preserved from the stain of original sin. And Thomas Aquinas says this, that it was very convenient, almost necessary, that the Immaculate Conception become a reality, because if Christ were to come into the world with his two natures, the human nature and divine nature, if the nature of Mary were tainted by sin, then the human nature of Christ would be tainted by sin. And Aquinas actually calls that an abomination, to think that our Lord's nature would be partially tainted by original sin. Mm-hmm. So he says that is the words that they use in the Latin, convenientia, or convenient, or necessary, that Mary have that privilege so that Christ could come into the world through the most pure channel. So the Immaculate Conception, what practical ways do you think we as lovers of Mary and Catholics, practical, concrete ways, can we show our love for the Immaculate Conception, number one, and show our love for it, and maybe derive blessings from it. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it would be make sure you go to Mass on the Feast of the Immaculate the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, which, of course, in this time of pandemic,
at least virtually, right? But actually, if they can come,
even it'd be good if you could come. Actually, with our 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock masses tomorrow, or there is that virtual mass at 6 p.m. tonight and 6 p.m. tomorrow night, which would be it, which in Spanish, but. Yeah, that'd be one way, Especially, I admire people who are coming to Mass during this time when it's not, strictly speaking, obligatory because of the pandemic. But if they do come, I think there's a special graces for them. So that would be one thing. Another thing could be to wear the Miraculous medal, but to wear it not just as something you forget about, as a talisman, yes, but rather as something that helps us to think about Mary, and we're thinking about her every day. And how we live our day is conditioned by that thought of Mary. Praying a rosary, of course, having images of our Blessed Mother. There's various ways we can do it with devotion. But I think probably the biggest thing is what you talked about the other day with Father Quan Tran, to imitate her virtues.
Yes.
That's certainly the best, that we ourselves should become immaculate.
Another thing that occurs to me is Saint Maxime Colby, who is the martyr that died in the concentration camp, Auschwitz. He had great love for the Blessed Virgin Mary, and his love was manifested through what is called the Immaculate. And he formed what is called the militia of the Immaculate. When he lived in the early part of the 1900s, the 20th century. One of the biggest enemies of the church back then was the Masons. So he formed the militia, the Immaculata, to fight against the Masons. I really believe that we're living in a very difficult time. You might even call it like a two standards today, an Ignatian two standards. And I really believe that we have to have recourse to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and see that we're in spiritual battle. One of the titles, and what Colby would actually do was he loved to promote devotion to Mary, but also he liked to carry miraculous medals wherever he went. He would travel sometimes in the train. He spent some time in Rome, and then he actually ends up by starting a place in Nagasaki, Japan. Incredible saint. And he would carry miraculous medals with him, and he'd actually give out the miraculous medals. He'd call them his spiritual ammunition, his spiritual bullets.
Wow.
So I think that in our battle against the devil, the flesh, and the world, and maybe the temptations we have in the pandemic, maybe the economic straits that we're going through now, I think now more than ever, I think we have to have recourse to the Blessed Virgin Mary. I like an image of, I heard this the other day on Relevant Radio, Patrick Madrid used it. I've used it also, but he really developed it. Is in the time of Noah, those who were saved in the time of Noah were those who were inside the ark. The ark of Noah can be compared to also the church. We stay within the church, within the context of the church, and we try to live our faith within the context of the church, we're in a safe haven. But another symbol of the church is the Blessed Virgin Mary. I think it's a good idea for us to seek refuge in two places, in the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. Like those are marvelous houses for us.
Good refuge, right? A good haven, right?
Very good haven. I think these hearts are so big that you can fit the whole world in it with lots of space left over.
Wonderful.
So they're a place where love and all the virtues and all the gifts of the Holy Spirit are reigning, in these two hearts.
But there's always more room, right?
Always more room, and there's a passageway between one heart and the other. They kind of intersect.
Would you like to give our priestly blessing? Then maybe Father Dave can be with us to start the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. We could do that.
That would be great.
Priestly blessing?
Okay. Well, by the Immaculate Conception, our Blessed Mother Mary, most pure and powerful, and all those who have been devoted to her that we've been thinking about and talking about, like St. Catherine Laboure and Father Alphonse Radisbon and all the others, Claude Newman, and may Almighty God bless you and give you great love for the Immaculate Conception. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Stop it and then start again.